Last night, Jesus Ferreira transfer to Seattle from Dallas was finally confirmed. It was in the works for a while. We'll talk about this a little bit more later in the show with the aforementioned Tom Bogert. But what do you make of Jesus Ferreira, World Cup national team player, moving internally in Major League Soccer?
Well, I think there are a couple schools of thought on Jesus Ferreira. I think largely the consensus is that he hasn't yet met whatever promise we were sold on him when he was at Dallas. Now, he had an 18-goal year a couple seasons ago.
He was
in the conversation for MVP for a while and Golden Boot and all that, but then fell off. Obviously, last season, only 5 goals. And that doesn't scream, hey, go spend big money on this guy and bring him in to help you win an MLS Cup title. But I think he's better than he showed last year. I think there is some thought that he regressed, and maybe he's not as good as the 18 goals. He played with Ricardo Pepi, I think, that year, and there was lots of talk about how that was part of the story. Man, I don't know. I like Jesus Ferreira sort of just as in general, like as a person, not necessarily. I'm not saying he should be in the national team. My scouting report on Jesus Ferreira isn't he's going to win Golden Boot in 2025. But I want him to succeed. I think this is an interesting move for Seattle. I kind of get it from Seattle's perspective. This is kind of a buy low. I know it's $2 million in GAM, and that feels like a lot. We can ask Tom later whether that is, in fact, a lot for this player. But it feels like a buy low kind of situation on Ferreira, because if he gets back to the 18-goal level or even 15, then that's huge for Seattle, right? They obviously were a good goal-scoring team last year, but defensively very good. So they can add that extra element. He knows the league. There's no adjustment period. There's no, hey, you got to fly from this place to that place. You got to play at altitude. Or you got to play in the heat. You got to play on turf. None of those things are going to be new for Jesus Ferreira. So I think this is fascinating from a Seattle perspective. And I think we can throw in here that it looks like Dallas has also traded Paul Arriola to Seattle. We'll see if that's gotten confirmed yet. And that's something Tom can tell us about. But that's out there as well. Now, he's more of a utility guy. We know Paul Arriola is going to put in a shift. He's going to be active on both sides of the ball, which I think is good for Seattle. We'll see if he gets used maybe as a wingback in certain situations. So I don't know. This is fascinating from what Seattle's trying to build, and I'm anxious to see how it works. I think it can make them better. Obviously, they went all the way to a Western Conference final, but I don't know. I don't know where I am yet right now on whether this is a good idea.
There's either a giant rebuild in the works at Dallas, or they're just stripping it for assets. It's kind of hard to see where they're going, and that's definitely a question I'm looking forward to kind of throwing at the MLS Insider at the top of the hour. But, I mean, with Ferreira, just in isolation, not with Arriola, but does Ferreira fit with what Seattle did, at least last year?
I think that they're probably going to have to make some adjustments, right? But I think you can argue that the way Jesus Ferreira plays, I don't know. I mean, you have Jordan Morris, right? And he's the guy who was playing through the middle for them. Raul Ruidiaz had a nice run and then kind of faded, and now he's departed. And maybe this is a replacement for Ruidiaz on that level and allows Jordan Morris to go wide. I don't know. That's the other part of this. Like tactically, what does this look like for Seattle, and how does Brian Smetzer make these things work together? Albert Rusnak got re-signed, so we know that there'll be somebody to provide the passes that will hopefully get those guys into space and allow them to score goals. But there's still lots of questions here.
Do you think that is there a timeline in which where Jesus Ferreira joins Seattle and just bonds really, really well with Jordan Morris and Rusnak, and Ferreira finds that 18 goals a year form again?
Yeah, I think there is a world where that happens. I've heard things from people that suggest that maybe Ferreira, his movement hasn't been good enough, and it makes him easier to mark, and that's something they have to figure out. If he's maybe he wasn't at Dallas, maybe he wasn't incentivized to put the effort in because of where that team was headed and the direction they chose to go, and how things were great under Nico Estevez last year. So I don't know. I don't know. This is it is a very risky thing for Seattle to do, to spend that much money on Jesus Ferreira, bring him in. And I've heard that his contract has escalators that could take him to a DP in the future. Jordan Morris takes a DP slot this year. Ooh. Based on escalators in his contract. So it's Morris, De La Vega, and I believe Rusnak, who are now DPs in Seattle. And, De La Vega has room to grow. Right? He showed some things, I guess, a little bit here or there, but not nearly enough. And his DP contract is tied up in his transfer fee. I think that hopefully this is going to work for Seattle, because I do think it's risky for Craig Waibel. There are people who I think are thrilled that they're making moves and trying to reboot things on the attacking end of the field, but I do think there's a lot of questions right now.
Interesting to see how Seattle looks. And I just got to say before we move on, Jordan Morris, his career and what he's done, he's maximized what his skill set is, like, to a maximum. Well, has anyone made more from what he's got than him?
Well, okay. I will say this about Jordan Morris and Jesus Ferreira, and you can put them, but this is something fascinating about this combination, or these two guys playing in the same team. National team fans both look at them with extremely jaundiced eyes, right? Both of these players are guys that have been in the national team picture, and everybody's like, that's not my guy. And right now they're not in the national team picture, so I'm not even sure you should waste your mental energy worrying about whether or not they're good enough to be U.S. men's national team players. I think you should just watch and see what they can do in Seattle. If you're a Seattle fan, you really have to hope that it all comes together for them. Now, Morris has been more consistent, I think, recently than Ferreira, but again, like, these are not superstar players that everybody just kind of recognizes, oh, they're really great. It's more like they're okay to above average to maybe even occasionally above that, especially I think in Morris's case recently. But it leaves a lot of room for, like, I'm just going to be disappointed, because this is the Seattle Sounders, and where's the big name signing to help them? I mean, this is not Clint Dempsey and Obafemi Martins, is it?
Man, that was actually the team that really got me into the league. I don't know if I ever shared that, but that was probably the most exciting at that point, at least, the most exciting MLS squad. Yeah, where's the Obafemi Martins?
Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly the same. And the edginess, there's a lack of edginess, right? There's a lack, and I'll throw in Nate's comment. Jesus lacks a bit of nasty. Same with Morris. A change could do him well. Neither of those guys are going to suddenly become, a kind of, I don't even know what the word is, bastard players. Is that a good way to say it?
Heels?
Sure. I mean, you could argue that Clint Dempsey had a lot of heel in him. I loved him. You loved him. Lots of national team fans loved him. Seattle Sounders fans loved him when he was there. But he is the heel, right? He plays that role. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. Obafemi Martins was all about showing off his skill, and he was the best. And he had that attitude, like, you're not going to stop me. I'm amazing. Watch what I can do. And I don't think that neither Morris nor Ferreira bring that to the table. And if you could get them to just be a little bit more. Maybe Morris does have it occasionally, but also, again, I think he just has. I saw Jeremiah Oshan, who runs Sounder at Heart, which is one of the greatest independent MLS outlets out there. They cover the Sounders in the rain. And Jeremiah was saying something like, I think you need to market, almost like have a marketing campaign around Jordan Morris where you give him a makeover and change his name and, like, do something. Actually, okay, here it is. This is actually Mark Kastner who said it, and Jeremiah reposted it. People are being incredibly weird about Jordan Morris, as usual. Here's my suggestion. Change his name, get him a fake passport, update his appearance. And then he went through, like, possible makeovers for Jordan Morris. And again, this is the idea that he splits opinion. Right? He's not a guy that people are all on board with. And that includes Sounder fans, I think.
Really? Interesting. We shall see, and maybe we'll dip into more of the Seattle and Dallas situations with Tom at the top of the hour.